Miss Coleman, why don't you solve the equation on the board?
We took up a collection amongst the teachers and such. It's not a lot, but it's enough to help get you settled in.
That's more than kind, Miss Sumner.
If the product of two terms is 0, then common sense says at least one of the two terms has to be 0 to start with. So if you move all the terms over to one side, you can put the quadratics into a form that can be factored, allowing that side of the equation to equal 0. Once you've done that, it's pretty straightforward from there.
In all my years of teaching, I have never seen a mind like the one your daughter has.
President Barack Obama once stated, "Learning is about so much more than just filling in the right bubble." So we're going to make sure that we're not obsessing about tests. Can standardized tests determine how smart a student truly is? Hello, my name is Maya Yates, and I'm going to talk about why standardized tests should stop being administered.
You may open the envelopes containing your papers. The exam starts now.
In 2018, Superintendent and Core Districts worker Steve Martinez and Rick Miller writes, "Even though educators, parents, and policymakers might think change signals impact, it says much more about the change in who the students are because it is not measuring the growth of the same student from one year to the next." If the government continues to enforce standardized testing, will students ever be tested individually? Martinez and Miller explains how academic growth can develop a change in measuring a student's improvement by measuring a school's increase in achievement. While standardized testing continues to evolve since 1845.
Currently, in most intelligence or tests, Latinos and Black people receive lower scores than whites and Asians. The question is what is the problem? Is there a problem with the test takers or the test? And for 100 years, Americans have made the case that Black people, Latino people are not achieving intellectually as much as other people, as much as white people. And I would argue, no, the problem isn't with these test takers. The problem is with the tests themselves. These are tests that were created by eugenicists. When you look at the person who created the SAT test, when you look at the person who first popularized the IQ test in the United States, these were avowed eugenicists.
In 2021, John Rosales and Tim Walker state, "During World War I, standardized tests have placed 1.5 million soldiers in units segregated by race and by test scores." Rosales and Walker furthered their information by describing how the Army developed a test to later create the Scholastic Aptitude Test, more known as the SAT, and increased testing in schools.
So what the research says clearly is that the single most important in-school factor is the quality of the teacher. And this is why we've pressed really hard in Washington, D.C. to radically change the caliber of every single teacher.
How do you do that? How do you start doing that, and how do you make it effective?
So you start by changing your selection around who you let into the classroom. We are one of the only countries who lets all of our
Teacher-wise.
C students become teachers. When you look at Finland and you look at Singapore, you have to be in the top 10% of your class in order to be a teacher. And so there's a recruitment.
Do you have a lot
and
of freedom to do
selection
that? Is
issues.
there a lot of
We
freedom,
do,
or are you pretty
yes.
structured on
We
that?
have, I mean, part of the challenge is we haven't been creative in terms of maximizing the things that we need to do to get there. We need to evaluate our teachers by taking into consideration a number of things, including how their students perform. Provide that feedback to teachers, give them professional development to help them learn and grow. When I got to the district, we had teachers who hadn't been evaluated in some 20 years. In any profession, that is absolutely ludicrous. How am I ensuring that the best teacher is in the classroom if I'm not providing consistent feedback and professional development opportunities for that person to get better? And we are recognizing and rewarding our highest performers.
In 2018, Matthew Chingos states Jackson and Kirklander highlight multiple explanations for the relationship between rigorous high school coursework and future success, including the richer curriculum, higher ability peer groups, and the likelihood that better teachers are assigned to advanced courses. Chingos explains how the best teachers are more likely to teach the higher advanced classes, this making other students in on-level classes have a lower academic progression rate since they don't have it as an effective teacher.
I don't know that test scores are really the only indicator or the most important indicator, both to a student's capacity, a student's potential for success in life beyond the classroom, and also to the efficiency of a school. You know, if we just dive into the weeds here for a minute, all of a sudden, if we're just looking at test scores and we're saying, well, test scores make a school great, then of course the schools that take in students who test really well are going to get better results. They're going to get better achievement results on those tests. This isn't to say that highly selective schools aren't good schools. It's just saying that they're inheriting students who do better on a certain set of metrics than schools that might not be getting students that do really well on those same tests. And I don't know that that's the way that we want to measure how efficient a school is, how effective a teacher is.
In 2019, author Margaret Pastor writes, he pointed out that in one of my 4 kindergarten classes, the student scores were noticeably lower, while in another, the students were outperforming the other 3 classes. Although standardized testing has changed throughout the years, is standardized testing still an effective way to test students individually? Pastor also points out that this seems reasonably right, but here's the problem. The underperforming kindergarten teacher and the high-performing teacher are one and the same person. Teachers are the people who can see a student's full potential in life. They can also help students improve academically by a landslide. If we focus on a student's struggles instead of a class's scores, we can enhance a student's future. Schools enforce a lot of pressure on students to increase schools' funding and test scores. For this reason, some students have decided to drop out.
And so in October of 2010, I get a phone call from a GBI agent, Georgia Bureau of Investigation. And he asked me to come in to, strangely, a mall parking lot is where I met him. And he tells me that there's been an erasure analysis done for the entire state of Georgia. 20% of the schools over the entire state of Georgia were flagged for high erasures.
Explain erasures.
So the erasure analysis was basically looking at how many times a student went from wrong to right.
Erases their answer.
Right,
and makes
it goes
it right.
from wrong to right. Right. After a certain amount, it's like statistically improbable.
A scandal that is told in the eyes of Shawnee Robinson tells a time when a school took advantage of their students. Since Parks Middle School had needs improvement on their test scores for the last 5 years, they were on the verge of closing for good. Not only were the administrators checking for stray markings found along the scantrons, but investigators also found that they were correcting the students' test answers after turning them in. Why do schools feel standardized tests can tell a student's development if they're not even directed toward the students themselves? If you agree standardized tests should stop being administered, then I encourage you to sign this petition that is made directly for the government to see.